How you doing? How you doing? And how you doing, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy Patty, and this is a fake intro. So we are having to re-upload our video from yesterday. Essentially what happened, and I can actually show you real quick. So essentially what happened is in our video yesterday, and I'm recording this at 12 o'clock, so I'm sorry if it's a little bit quiet, but it's, very, very late where I am. But there was some issues and some takes were not edited out of my video, and I tried to edit them through the YouTube studio because I thought that would be a thing that would work. And what ended up happening is it basically trimmed it down to just the part I was trying to remove. So we're gonna have to go back into Adobe, re-edit our original upload and everything, get that all fixed up, clean up, put this new fake intro in explaining why we're re-uploading. So this should be out in the morning. Tomorrow, or today, I guess, is my actual birthday. So I will do my best to try and get a video out. But we're gonna just kind of see how the day goes. Maybe we'll do a birthday stream. But all right, thank you so much, and here's the video. How you doing? How you doing? And how you doing, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy Petty, and I appreciate you stopping by today. And we're in for a good one today, guys. So if any of you happen to not add the stress of Twitter to your life, don't know if I recommend it. All social media is kind of poison in my opinion. Anyways, you might have heard about Boycott Genshin. So we're going to break this down today, kind of go over what the points are that are coming up in it. There is a fair amount of misinformation happening with it. And also because of that, there's a bunch of other stuff that's kind of being glossed over or phrased in a way that makes it easier to write off without actually listening. So we're going to go through and try to break all this stuff down the best that we can. Obviously, it's going to be a bit of a struggle. All right, so a couple of things that I want to get out of the way before we actually start getting into this. On the channel, we have a pretty hard line, be respectful rule. You don't have to agree with everyone else in the comment section, but you be respectful of them. If you're being hateful, if you're attacking people, I'm not a fan of that. I'm probably going to ban you. Obviously, I'm going to evaluate it on a circumstance by circumstance case because A, we're a small channel and we have that opportunity. But you ain't got free speech here, okay? If you want to be shitty to other people, go on Twitter and do that. I'm absolutely not going to give you a place to do that here. I'm not here for it. I personally have mental health issues, so I already, for my own sake, block nasty people when they show up on videos. Just not something I'm personally okay with dealing with, and I'm not going to let any of y'all be subjective to it. So be peaceful, and if you can't be peaceful, shut the fuck up, because I'll get rid of you pretty quick. Okay. Also, another big mention, something that's going to come up a lot in this video and the way that we talk about everything, it's going to be cancel culture stuff. And real quick, just to kind of share my thoughts on that, I think a lot of cancel culture stuff is rooted in a good idea, but cancel culture itself is filled with a lot of loud narcissists that really just feed off of that energy of attacking people, of putting them down, of conflating their own ego and pumping it up. It's a very unhealthy thing. You can't approach any single issue like it's black and white. There's no issue on this planet that is so easily broken down into either Camp A or Camp B. It's not how the world works. Not in any shape, way, or form. I was very fortunate when I was younger that my father is the way that he was and would think about something and he would rant about stuff. I'll be 100% honest about that. Petty didn't get a lot of words in when he was a child because Daddy liked to talk. But he would talk about an issue from one angle, then from another angle, and then from another angle. And what really prevails, even back then, and it persists to this today, where there is just two standalone narratives that are opposed to each other, and the entire world likes to act that those are the only two things that exist, and it absolutely doesn't. Nothing exists within a vacuum. There is grayscale to all of this. Nothing is black and white. Absolutely nothing. So I don't agree with a lot of the approach of cancel culture and those narratives. Do I think a lot of them are rooted in some truths that should definitely be talked about and evaluated? Yes. Big ol' yes on that one, boy. But throwing the baby out with the bathwater every time, it isn't really good. Unless it's something completely overt, like Kevin Spacey, get that child raping dude the fuck out of here. You know what I mean? There's obviously some lines to stuff. So I just wanted to put that disclaimer out there. Hopefully we're all in similar spaces. So let's take a look at what's actually happening in Boycott Genshin. So first thing we're going to take a look at is this that's floating around. And this is one of the things that is a bit of misinformation, bit of a mistake, and kind of just undercuts a lot of the things in this Boycott Genshin that there could be actual conversations about. Not canceling anybody, but actual real conversations about some of the things that are brought up. This one, not really it, Chief. So essentially what we have here is an NPC talking about confessing their love to this other NPC. Well, issue being that the NPC in-game is a child. So we have grown man here, grown man, all right here, talking about loving a child. All right, full stop. That's a little weird. That's very weird, in fact. Very, very weird. Easily explainable, though. This is Flora from the beta. She was originally an adult woman NPC, and that was something that was changed before the game actually launched. And obviously this dialogue was something that was overlooked or missed and is not actually what it's being represented as occasionally in that hashtag. So this is kind of just a silly thing. And again, I think this really just kind of serves to undercut stuff, and the people that are predisposed to not take a lot of this thing seriously, they're going to latch on to this, and yeah, they're kind of in the right here, but it's going to hurt down the line. So we'll go ahead and keep rolling through these. Resize that. Resize that. So the other thing that is being referenced is essentially a video that comes actually from 2020. Now, the version you'll probably see floating around on Twitter is very low quality, and it's kind of hard to tell where it's coming from. Well, this is the video that it's actually coming from. This is coming from a tour of MiHoYo Studios in 2020. I have it muted, so I hopefully shouldn't get hit with any copyright stuff. But this was a promotional video done last year to kind of hype up the studio, to look at, you know, some of their gaming processes and stuff like that, and kind of just to see what their office looks like. And it looks cool and super pretty, right? So what people are upset about is around the 130 mark, and they showed this right here, which is someone working on hilichurl animations within a 3D program. I actually don't recognize which one this is, but they're essentially working on, what's the correct frame for it? Like kind of like the outline within the rigging. The rigging, that's the name of it. They're working on the rigging. Jesus Christ, we just spent a minute like, oh, what's the word? What's the word? They're working on the rigging and the animations and everything like that. That's why you see, you know, what the end product is going to look at, and then over here, where they're actually setting up the motions and everything like that. And we can see that in between those two things, they have a reference, and it's of Native Americans dancing and jumping up and down, which pretty reminiscent of how the hilichurls move and do their little dances. So what we see happening here is them taking heavy inspiration from Native American cultures to make the hilichurls, which are a group that we kind of just murder. And we know that they're intelligent beings. They talk, they have poetry. We're killing a primitive people, which if you go back and look at some of my early videos when we were in the closed beta or towards the beginning of the launch of the game, when we did the quest for the first time for, was it Ella Musk? and she's essentially like teaching you about the hilichurls and everything, and you learn that there's this added depth to them, and they're not just kind of like cartoony bad guys, that there are real people living in this world. It makes it super weird that we're killing them. I said it all the way back then that made me feel uncomfortable. It's very, very, very weird. Usually, monsters and minions in games are not humanized to the degree that you feel like you're killing real people. Unless it's a rated M game like Grand Theft Auto, where that's part of the literal design. Still a little psychopathic, but it's not great. One of the issues that's coming up a lot with this is that it doesn't feel like good representation to some of the people in those groups. And not every indigenous person feels like this is a slight against their culture or anything like that. Again, when you know these groups, you know that the social justice warrior stuff doesn't really align with what that group believes, because that group doesn't believe anything as a whole. There's a lot of individual opinions and takes in there. So it's hard to talk about these things. Can we say that the representation isn't great? Yeah, not really a good look to pick the inspiration for a, more primitive race that we're kind of just murdering, to Indians, a group that was murdered a lot. So, yeah, kind of a bad take. In America, racism comes up a lot, and it needs to come up a lot because there are a lot of racist things still in America. I've lived in some very, very racist places before. Believe me, racism is alive and well and doing just fine, unfortunately, in America. But it's something we constantly have to battle. We constantly have to be looking for and correcting. This does not happen on the scale that it happens in America in other countries, specifically in China. So I'm not surprised that this wouldn't register as such a bad take with a Chinese company. I think that it would be harder for them to understand our experience and perspective on that, because they're probably, it's not in their face as much as it's in ours. So while this is in very, very poor taste, in my opinion, and it's also very weird to humanize monster characters that you're fighting in a game to this degree, but I don't think it's outright, racism. I don't think they did it because they were like, oh, primitive group that gets murdered a lot, we should do Indians. I hope to God that's not the case, because Jesus Christ. But it's still not a good look, and it's something that should be taken into account in the future. So do we need to, remodel hilichurls and get rid of them? No, but it should be understood that, like, hey, dude, that was kind of a bad move. It's a bad look. Most of this is going to boil down into being a bad look. So I feel like that's as much as I can kind of speak on this subject, since I am so personally far removed from it. Let's take a look at the next one that's going around a lot within this. So one of the other things that's coming up in Boycott Genshin is with Jin Yan, and essentially that people find it in poor taste that she is a darker skinned character that people are afraid of. Now, a lot of people who that are essentially of the camp that this is all being overblown, will reference that, hey, there's plenty of dark-skinned people in China itself. Like, that is not indicative of them being a separate race from the people that they're around. And that she is scary because that she is kind of punk rock. And that goes very much against the culture and everything of Leeway, and that is why the residents there are afraid of her and everything like that. Also some spontaneous fire issues from what I understand. And that is all true. So one of the things that I think that this camp is essentially missing when it comes to the issues that some people are having with Jinyan is that her experience of people looking at her and being afraid and thinking that she's, violent or angry, that is a experience that translates very directly to what people of color can experience from racist people. It's a very, very dehumanizing thing, and no person ever wants to see the look of another person that makes them feel like they aren't people. That is a very, very fundamental thing that I don't think anybody should have a hard time understanding. So that experience is very easily relatable, while what's happening to cause that experience are not the same two things. The experience itself relates very heavily to that, so I can understand why there's people making that connection and feeling that way, because that is a very true and very lived experience, and it's it affects entire lives. Like it's not nothing. Just because in this instance you say like, well, it's just because of the clothes, that is an experience that they're going to understand and relate to. Now, did I think that MiHoYo intentionally put that in there? No, I don't think they deeply understand racism and what a lot of those experiences are like due to their very low exposure to that experience. So I think this is something that I can understand where that comes from. I feel like it pushes a line to say that this is intentionally what's being done, but that experience of hers can absolutely be related to experiences with racism. And honestly, I think that is one of the best ways that we can kind of surmise the Jinyan situation. Now, are there going to be super extreme people on each side saying crazy stuff? Yeah, absolutely. This is Twitter. That's there every single time. But at the core of it, I believe it's the disconnect between the two camps, that while this is not here because of racism, the experience it causes relates very directly to that, and those people that have experienced that can relate to it. And I don't think it's intentional representation of that. I think it is a byproduct, but I don't think there's any harm in drawing those correlations and talking about it. And again, that's what I think a lot of this should be, is like, hey, talk about this issue, bring a little bit of awareness to it. But again, no canceling Genshin. And just one more thing. So this came up over and over again when looking through the hashtag. And if this is your general reaction, it's kind of cringe, bro. It's kind of cringe. And I see this argument all of the time where it's basically boiling down to learn the difference between fantasy and reality. It's just fantasy, bro. It doesn't matter, man. Where I see this come up the most is in anime discussions in regards to lollies. This is where I see this kind of mentality used the most. It's just fantasy, bro. It's not actually happening. It's just fantasy, bro. The whole "it's just fantasy, bro" doesn't work too well if, you say you write a very vivid, detailed story about killing your girlfriend. She might not appreciate that very much, and you just telling her it's just fantasy, bro, probably ain't gonna help. That's probably not a healthy thing to do. It's probably a little weird. Lollies fall under that same tree for me. Sexualizing children characters is pretty weird. So, while that's not the instance that this argument is being used in this case, it's just a shit argument. And I really hope to God people stop making this, because it's the worst. The worst. It's just not grounded in anything. Something that's not tangibly real can still be very, very, very harmful. Shit, even just information alone can be weaponized and used to fucking kill people. Okay? Just because it's fantasy does not mean it is not potentially harmful and does not potentially lead to real damage. That's a thing that happens. I don't know why we have to talk about it like that's not a real thing. Fantasy can affect reality. That's 100% fact. 100% fact. Don't care. 100% fact. So, to what extent it does is an arguable fact, but it does. Just saying. But alright, I think that's the best that we can do with this whole situation. Ultimately, I think there's some good things that can be learned from this and talked about. Do I think Genshin needs to be canceled? No. There's also a lot of other little things that have also been tacked on to this since it started a day ago. Things like touching on the lack of two-factor authentication, security issues. Basically, people are just starting to use this to kind of rally all the complaints they have about the game. But the things that are, actually pushing what actually fueled the beginning of it is what we covered today. Other stuff is kind of being tacked on as we're seeing, but yeah. All in all, a little bit silly. But alright guys, thank you so much for stopping by today. I really appreciate them faces. I hope y'all have a good one. Please God, remember to be respectful to each other down in them comment section. Your boy's gonna have to swing the band hammer around. So yeah, you're gonna have to catch your boy in the next one, cause we're out of here. Deuces.